The little town of Harmony Creek was famous for one thing, its Thanksgiving Day parade. Every year, the whole town gathered on Main Street. The air smelled sweet, like pumpkin pie and roasted turkey. Kids waved tiny flags, their faces sticky with candy. This year, the sky was a perfect, crisp blue. The high school marching band was tuning their instruments, their shiny brass horns gleaming under the autumn sun. No one knew this Thanksgiving would be different. They thought it would be just like all the others, full of laughter and food. They were wrong. Terribly wrong. I was standing near the giant inflatable turkey, the one everyone called Tom the Titan. My mom was fussing with my scarf, telling me not to eat too much popcorn before dinner. Everything felt normal. The mayor was about to give his yearly speech, his voice booming from the loudspeakers. He always said the same thing, something about community and gratitude. But just as he started to speak, a strange silence fell over the crowd. The music stopped. The happy chatter died down. Something was coming. Something that didn't belong in Harmony Creek. It started as a small, twitching puddle near the old town fountain. At first, people thought it was a spilled drink, maybe some cranberry juice from one of the food stalls. But then it started to move. It wasn't like water. It jiggled and pulsed, like a giant glob of raspberry jelly. It grew bigger and bigger, slurping up fallen leaves and bits of confetti from the street. A deep, gurgling sound echoed from its center. It was the color of dark, jellied cranberry sauce, but it was alive, and it looked hungry. A little boy pointed a shaky finger. "Mommy, what is that?" he whispered. His mother didn't answer. She just stared, her eyes wide with a fear I had never seen before. The thing was no longer a puddle. It was a mound, a quivering hill of goo, and it was sliding slowly, deliberately, toward the parade route. The festive music was gone, replaced by a low, humming sound that made my teeth ache. This wasn't part of the show. This was a nightmare, and our Thanksgiving was about to become a feast of fear. The blob slithered forward, leaving a sticky red trail behind it. It moved without legs or eyes, yet it seemed to know exactly where it was going. Its first target was the prize-winning pumpkin pie stand. Mrs. Gable's pies were legendary, each one a perfect circle of golden brown crust and spiced filling. The blob flowed over the table, and with a sickening, the pies vanished into its jiggly mass. The table, the checkered cloth, everything was gone. The blob seemed to swell, growing just a little bit bigger, a little bit darker. It was eating. Panic erupted. People screamed and started to run. The happy parade turned into a stampede of terror. Parents grabbed their children, pulling them away from the street. The marching band dropped their instruments with a loud clang and scattered in every direction. The giant inflatable turkey, Tom the Titan, was knocked loose from its ropes. It floated aimlessly into the air, a silent, smiling witness to the chaos below. The blob didn't seem to care about the noise. It just kept moving, its path slow and steady, absorbing everything it touched. I saw it head for the petting zoo. The small pen held a few goats and a very fluffy sheep. The animals bleated in fear, trapped behind the small wooden fence. The blob oozed toward them, a relentless, silent predator. It poured over the fence as if it wasn't even there. For a moment, the sheep was covered in the shimmering red goo. There was a muffled cry, and then nothing. The blob pulled back, and the pen was empty. It had eaten the sheep. The sight made my stomach turn. This thing wasn't just weird. It was a monster. The blob was now the size of a small car, and it was heading right for the center of the crowd. People were tripping over each other, desperate to escape. The mayor, still on the stage, was frozen in place, his speech forgotten. He just stammered into the microphone, What is it? What is happening?" But no one had an answer. We were all just trapped in this Thanksgiving horror story, watching as the cranberry-colored creeper came to turn our town into its personal dinner plate. It was a holiday feast, and we were the main course. Sheriff Brody was the first to act. He was a big man with a calm voice, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Everyone get back! Get inside!" he yelled, waving his arms. But where could we go? The blob was blocking Main Street. Suddenly, an idea sparked. Mr. Henderson, the owner of the hardware store, shouted, "The cold! It moves slow! Maybe it hates the cold!" It was a long shot, but it was the only shot we had. Thanksgiving in Harmony Creek was chilly, but we needed something much, much colder. A plan formed, whispered frantically from person to person. "The fire extinguishers!" someone yelled. A group of brave townsfolk, including my dad and Sheriff Brody, ran into the shops lining the street. They came back armed with white and red canisters. From the fire station at the end of the road, firefighters aimed their powerful hoses, but not with water. They were filled with cold fighting foam. It was a strange army, armed with fire safety equipment against a giant, hungry dessert from another world. The Turkey Day tussle had begun. "Now," Sheriff Brody commanded. A dozen white clouds of icy carbon dioxide shot out from the extinguishers, hitting the blob all at once. The monster recoiled. A sizzling sound, like soda fizzing over, filled the air. The parts of the blob that were hit with the cold spray started to harden. They became brittle, like frozen candy. The firefighters then blasted it with thick white foam, covering more of its slimy surface. The blob shuddered and shook, trying to pull away from the freezing attack, but it was too slow. It wasn't enough. The blob was huge, and the extinguishers were running out. Just when it seemed like the monster would recover, the town's ice cream truck came rattling down a side street. It was driven by old Sal, who usually sold popsicles in the summer. He screeched to a halt, flung open the back doors, and yelled, "Liquid nitrogen! For the flash-frozen treats!" He had a huge tank of it. With a great heave, he and my dad tilted the tank, pouring a river of super-cold liquid right at the base of the blob. A huge cloud of steam erupted, and the monster froze solid. There it stood, a giant, ugly red statue in the middle of Main Street. The blob was frozen solid, a grotesque monument to the weirdest Thanksgiving ever. It looked like a giant, lumpy popsicle. Cautiously, people crept out from their hiding places. They poked the frozen monster with sticks. It was hard as a rock. A cheer went up, starting as a small murmur and growing into a huge roar of relief. We had done it. The people of Harmony Creek, armed with fire extinguishers and ice cream supplies, had saved the day. The cleanup was strange. The town brought in construction equipment to break the frozen blob into smaller pieces. Each chunk was loaded onto freezer trucks to be taken away to a government lab far, far away. The parade was ruined, the pies were eaten, and Main Street was a sticky, frozen mess. But no one cared. We were safe. As the last piece of the blob was hauled away, the town felt different. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were a team. We had faced a real monster together and won. That evening, we didn't go home to our separate Thanksgiving dinners. Instead, everyone brought what food was left to the town square. We set up makeshift tables and shared turkey sandwiches, bowls of mashed potatoes, and the few pies that had survived. We were cold and tired, but we were together. The mayor gave a new speech, not about history, but about bravery. He thanked everyone from Sheriff Brody to old Sal in his ice cream truck. He said he was thankful for a town that knew how to fight back. Every Thanksgiving after that was a little different in Harmony Creek. We still had a parade, but we also had a new tradition, the Blob Drill, where we all sprayed fire extinguishers at a giant red balloon, just in case. The story became a legend, a spooky tale to tell new generations. We learned that year that Thanksgiving wasn't just about turkey and pie. It was about being there for each other, even when a giant cranberry-colored blob tries to eat your town. And that was something to be truly thankful for.